All right. Webbdagarna 2013. Come fly with me. Come fly with us for the next 30 minutes or so. In Swinglish and Italian English, I'm Andreas Sjöström and I work for Sogeti.
And I'm Massimo, working for SAS.
Hello. Hello. What happened, you know, what happened? We all seem to not be able to part from it, to part from the phone. What happened? What is it? I think that it became, the phone became the remote control of life. We can't seem to put enough life-altering features into it. We can't seem to even leave the thing behind. In that sense, I think that the phone is actually merely a stepping stone. It's just a temporary thing of focus. You know, electricity. We came to value electricity in the late 19th century. We've been playing around for it much longer than that, but someone came up with the telegraph, and then someone came up with the light bulb, and all of a sudden we understood the value of electricity. And now when we think about electricity, it's not just the light bulbs or the telegraph, it's everything. I think the phone is the light bulb of digital and online, and that we are now just seeing the beginning. This taught us what digital and online means, and the next step is obviously everything connected. Not necessarily with a screen, but everything, all objects, Internet of Things and all. But that's Webbdagarna 2014. Today is today. Today is today. And today is about mobile. I'm proud to share the stage with Massimo Pascotto from Scandinavian Airlines. And I met SAS and Massimo a couple of years ago. And we looked at what's going on in the market, what are companies doing. And at that time, SAS was doing what most other companies were doing, were like playing around, experimenting, building brand in the App Store. There was this time killer app that SAS had published, had a few nice games in it, branding, experimenting, fun and games. So we sat down and had a conversation about mobile strategy. Because for everything that we want to become business critical, business relevant, business critical, you need to have a mobile or a strategy for. And for mobility, you need to have a mobile strategy. So we had a conversation about mobile strategy and how to inject mobility into business and how to inject business into mobility. What do we need to do? At the end, or during this strategy process with SAS, we came up with the first couple of apps that drives sales through crisp and clean booking, flight search, seating, check-in, all the basic core features that you as a customer, a user, expect to find from, in this particular instance, SAS. Put that center and core. And a couple of days ago, we released an inspirational app for the iPad that builds on the inspirational aspects of travel and inspiring people to travel. This presentation, we would like to share with you some of the lessons that we learned and how we came about ending up with these apps to begin with.
And very good morning to everyone. My name is Massimo. I'm the second Italian on stage this year at Webbdagarna, so it's a huge improvement, I think, right? And so apologize my accent and actually that I'm taking this one in English. I've been working for the company like 13 years almost, different jobs in the last year since 2005, when I moved here and started working in the head office, working primarily with e-commerce and digital and been running different projects from CMS, web analytic, web pages designers, e-commerce modules, and so on. The most coolest actually project that I've been running was actually the last one, the one that we're going to talk about today. Before I'm going there, I would like to talk about my job. I got the best job in the company. Sometimes I think that I get the best job in the world, working for an airline. Working here in Sweden. Sweden is index number 4 in the innovations, according to some statistic released some years ago. You know, it's the tech place, right? So everything is happening here. And SAS has a huge legacy in innovations, and I'm going through a couple of them. You know, everybody knows SAS exactly, but few of you knows that we were the first one, you know, flying Transantarctic flight back in 1952. We were actually flying, the first airline that was flying over the pole, and I'm going to talk about the reframing problems later on in the presentation, which is a little bit about this. You know, Stockholm and Scandinavian in a European context was really high. And so how could we sell tickets to, for instance, California? And back in 1952, we were flying from Scandinavian to San Francisco, you know, one third less of the time. We decreased the time flight from 36 hours to 22 hours just because we were flying over the pole. And again, in 1965, we have introduced the first booking engine way before the internet was invented. And it was, you know, it was the prerequisite, it was the foundation to what it became Amadeus afterward, 20 years later, which is the biggest global distribution system. Almost 40% of the airlines now, traditional airlines, are using this system. Entertainment on board in 1968, and now, you know, it's a hygienic factor to watch movie in a plane, right? But in 68, it was state of the art. We were the first one introducing entertainment on the plane. And then again, biometric check-in in 2006. We've been covering the full infrastructure in Scandinavian, allowing users to enter plane and to enter lounges and to check in with biometric. This technology was replaced by NFC recently. We've been releasing to our gold passenger a sticker. And through the sticker, which they can put it on anything in a mobile, for instance, and they can board the plane through security just by beaming the phone. So I'm carrying the legacy of a traditional, innovative airline, and it's really challenging because this is how it looks like our website today.
Yeah, you have some expectations now, Massimo, in the digital channel to live up to, right?
A little bit of stress as well, right, and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the website that you know, and it's been designed back in 2005 and released in 2006. And by the way, I was part of the project, so if you have to blame someone, I'm here on stage, you can throw me stuff. And the internet was like that at that time. I remember it was designed for 800 pixel of width, you know, but during the time, the things changed. There were lots of devices, new screens, and now this is how the web looks today. We have tablet, different devices, we have different screens, and this is the experience that our users still have. So we are working hard on getting any of these interfaces to be usable through our channel. And this is the starting point, because now we are thinking the internet still connected to device and connected to screens, but it doesn't end there. Tomorrow the internet will be things connected. I never heard as much as in the last years about the Internet of Things, and so how the things start connecting to the internet. And our NFC sticker actually is an example of that. It's using internet to beam the Eurobonus number while you're crossing, the different touch point, or where you're interacting in different touch point of SAS. So here, when we start this project, we had to create it on a foundation of 3 pillars, and it was, we identified through the fact that it's business, it's core business. We need to be there, and it's expected to be there, and our passenger expected to be there. And it's also about the beauty. You can't, I never heard about the word beauty since, in the last years. Actually, the app industry and the beauty that introduced the iPhone, from both on a device, hardware and software perspective, it made it like a trend, like fashion, right? And influenced in some, so to speak, also the web part of that. And the website now these days, they look, they're like beautiful. And you're talking about the beauty when you see, you brag about beauty. You use social media to discuss about that. There are tons of sites that are, discussing about beauty. And again, quality. You can't do anything if you don't have a quality. And in a challenging infrastructure like SAS, the quality has been difficult due to the legacy. But talking about the business, when we started the project with Andreas, it was like a couple of years ago. It was a more strategic project. So we went through all the steps that you need to do in order to build a business case. And we started from user interview, of course, and 74% of users were carrying a smartphone. And that was enough to build a business case at that time. 74%.
That's not a lot today. It's like 100% today.
You don't even ask the question today, right?
No, right.
It's expected that you're carrying a smartphone. So, and again, at that time, when we look up the statistic on the website on SAS.se, 7% was coming from mobile devices. And at that time, it was like, wow, 7% of our users are using an interface that was not designed for that device. And now we checked yesterday the statistic, and we have 25% of traffic on SAS.se coming from mobile devices.
And that's still
sense,
when
right?
you're not really finished with the responsive web design and what's cooking in the lab now. This is the number you have.
And we are going to see it later.
Right.
And it does make sense, right? We do communicate with email marketing. We do put offers, and the first things that you do in the morning when you wake up is to check your email, right? And maybe to interact with your devices. So it's not surprising that it's like that. But when we started, then we implemented. When we launched, we got actually the proof that it was right. We had. In the first day that we started marketing, we did a soft launch for 2-3 weeks. So we've been launching the app without doing any marketing. And the small community of travel, business traveler actually found it immediately and started blogging about that. That one gave us 2-3 weeks to secure quality about the app and to check what was the perception of the app, and they were extremely positive. And then the day that we launched the app in March of this year, we had 42,000 downloads in less than 7 hours that day. And now, since then, since 5 months, since the app was released, we have 560,000 downloads. If you're looking up on a target group perspective, we have our travel class, as we call it, passengers that are flying 5 times a year, which is roughly a little bit more than 1 million kroner. In just 5 months, we cover 50% of our target audience. And the business case that when we put the business case, was actually much lower than this. So in less than 5 months, actually, we had a return of investment. And it's not just about download, right? I mean, download is definitely one important KPI, but it's about how much your app is used, how much users actually are interacting with the app. And it's impressive to see sometimes, the active users. We're talking about 250 active users at the same time, and which counts, about 20,000 sessions every day. Of course, in a travel context, it does make sense. You're using it just for browsing, you're using it for making a booking, you're using when you are at the airport, and you're using even during the trip. So this one brought us actually #1 in the travel sector, in the travel category for different months, and if I'm not wrong, today we are still there. So talking about the numbers, of course, our e-commerce, website is huge. It's probably one of the biggest ones. We're selling for 1 billion kroners every year. But the app and all the business case around the app was built around the ability to provide a tool for making a booking. And we do have today roughly 10-12 million kroners every month coming in from mobile booking. How did we get there? How do we design? And that's what we're going to talk a little bit later. We started plotting up the travel journey, which you see on the very top. So this is from inspiration from choosing airlines, making a booking, get ready at the airport to check in, at departure, at the gate, on board. So we've been plotting the different features and business that we wanted to deliver, functionality we want to deliver, and we're trying to make some prioritization, and I'm telling you later how we went there. Here on the bottom, there was no rooms in the slide to put that there. There are the user needs. So for each of these steps, we have what the users need in order to make a booking, how the users will interact when they are at the airport, at the check-in or at the gate. And this one is probably the most interesting part when talking about mobility in an app, because we differentiate how do we deliver the different features, the different services, the different functionality across the different channels. So SAS app, the website, the email, the SMS, voice, TV, kiosk, you name it. And the app is actually the first one that is marked on red. It's actually the only channels that cover the full travel chain. We can inspire people. You're going to talk about this. We can allow them to make a booking. We can allow them to make a check-in. We can even now introduce and making usage of the app on board, because we have some tails that keep it with the Wi-Fi on board. In a destination, sharing, bragging, and even feedback and customer relationship after the trip was done. So how did we get there in terms of prioritization? That was the trickiest part. The most difficult part was we started from a blank page, which was really good. I mean, now we are migrating the site from the old and legacy platform to the new one, and it's difficult in the context in which you need to think about what you have. You need to migrate it to the new platform. Here, we had a blank page, and we had to, pretty much we could do anything. But the challenge of that was doing this exercise to define what were the areas in which we wanted to deliver business. Like, is it a brand? Is it a service provider? Do you want to do check-in? Is it the direct sales? Is what we call it ancillary sales, which are everything that is not connected to a flight ticket, to a ticket, like selling lounges, selling hotel, cars, and you name it, and inspirational. And we had to slide there to put the values to each of them in order to make a prioritization. This one created a foundation for key characteristic of the app.
Right. So focusing on then the core features representing the full journey experience from a functional point of view. When you start to conceptualize and design these features, it makes sense to decide on what characteristics should we build into these features, and we ended up selecting four characteristics. So, the first one is about immediacy, and an immediacy characteristic inside of an app is all about making the information and functionality extremely immediate to reach. It could be the first screen in the app, for example, that makes sense for the user in that particular context and time. So it's immediately available to me when I should check in or when I can do the reseating and things like that. So the immediacy factor is really important. And really, when it comes to to scoping the functional aspects of an app, it's really important to, if you haven't addressed the core features first, it's easy that you can quickly become irrelevant in this channel, even irritating. So look at and listen, try to understand what your customer is having as basic needs first in your projects. The second characteristic is about individualism. That is about being able to sign in, log in, personalize, have my profile, store my passenger details, and get even further down the road the ability to control how the app notifies you and when it notifies you and with what it notifies you. So it's about personalization. It's a really important characteristics of a personal thing like the phone. The third characteristic is about inspiration. And when you look at mobility and mobile solutions projects, it's easy to make a fundamental mistake about inspiration, to make a faulty assumption that the user is always in a hurry or in a rush when using the device. And then you just de-scope and you thin it out and you don't take the entire scope and present that to the user. In fact, when you are using your phone or your tablet, it's often in a very relaxed state and you have a lot of time. So it's a good opportunity to also inspire about your products and services. So inspiration is really important. Inspiration can drive transaction. And then fourth, I think this is the trickiest part, the innovation. in order to stand out and catch curiosity from your customers, it's important to inject the right amount of innovation into the core features that you're building. If you are all about innovation, it's easy that you get to become quirky, or that it appears to be just fun and games. So make sure that you have a firm ground to stand on when it comes to the core features and the core business drivers, and then add innovation to that. So this is a really important balance. And it also needs to, we need to ask ourselves the question, what is our innovation management process look like? How do we catch new ideas, internally as well as externally? How do we prioritize them? How do we get influenced? How do we decide if it's a prototype, a concept, or we inject innovation into an ongoing project? This is all about innovation management, and it's really core when it comes to mobile projects. So we ended up covering, I think, fairly well 3 of these characteristics. And I will talk about inspiration a little bit later. The individualism is again, my bookings early on, first screen, immediacy is the stored passenger information, makes the booking through just a series of very few taps extremely rapid. And then innovation, which I think can look maybe a little bit humble, like it does here. But you see the slider. Most of you who travel with Scandinavian Airlines, you may have some membership points and how to use them and where to redeem them. And we put a little slider there, so it's really easy to decide if you want to pay all in cash or with your points that you may have on your account. With that basic feature, we're seeing now the points being used. So that's a small part of innovation, and these are the 3 characteristics that we ended up with in the first round.
And this one created foundation for for starting designing. We took this key characteristic, we put it on the wall, and we start pretty much the design process. And the design process looks like a holistic, exactly UX oriented, in which we start from sketching, going to wireframing and design. And I remember we started, was probably the most complex part of this process was actually starting from the whiteboard, from a white sheet. We probably spent more time on doing sketches for critical screen than to do
many
wireframe.
late nights at Arlanda.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is how it looked like. We started from this is we call it the upsell page. This is the most important page that we have in the app. In an e-commerce perspective, is where we want to invite users to upsell, so to buy more expensive ticket like economy extra or business class. So we at the same time we had to preserve the simplicity, the one-tap operation to get the things straightforward. So we started like that. This is my ugly handwriting. I'm really a bad sketch guy. And we try different stuff there, which created the foundation to get to wireframe, which is more details and actually included a wider roadmap. For instance, we have a filter in there that the visual design didn't have. And then once this one was done, it was actually not difficult to get the visual design in place. And how do we get the visual design? We started with a so-called mood board. So we check out different brand elements from the SAS brand, interior on board, for instance, check-in, and we look up outside, benchmarking, but not only related to fly industry, but to the design industry in general. So we put up this mood board, which was like, yes, this is the feeling that we would like to have. This is the emotion we would like to have with the app. This one brought us to create a style sheet. And yes, we're using skeuomorphism, was mentioned early yesterday, if I'm not wrong, which is like bringing the reality, the design reality into the mobile app. So we actually, these are the new pictures or the new interior on board that are not implemented yet, but they're in the pipeline.
And so then all of a sudden, Apple decided to change their mind on skeuomorphism.
We need to start over pretty much.
All right.
And yes, we have the wooden background, so the wooden background comes from the wooden background that we will have in business class seats, all the lighting effect from the very top calls in, the spotlight that we have on board. And the mid-blue elements are calling the new check-in counters that are equipped across all Scandinavia. So we wanted to get this connection, and this one has influenced actually the full digital ecosystem of SAS. So now we are redesigning the website. Actually, you are the first non-SAS people to see the facelift that we're going to introduce in a few months on the site, on the right-hand side there. So, you know, the app and the design process, you know, from the app actually was the catalyst, was the trigger for, you know, for adjusting all the other digital.
It became like a catalyst for all the platforms.
Exactly, and of course now, as Andreas said, we are in the process of flattening up everything. So we are removing all the skeuomorphism part, and we are putting flat backgrounds, and you see some sketches here. Beauty is nothing if it's not escorted by quality. And that's the trickiest part. You need to have a solid infrastructure in order to deliver performance, to deliver stability. And this is the challenge that we have. SAS is a complex and legacy. We call ourselves legacy carriers, just to compare it to the new low-cost carriers, which have been built around the internet. So our infrastructure is extremely complex. To give an example, this is the architecture of the booking engine, from the availability page to the confirmation page. These are 3 screens from a user perspective. So, you know, the complexity of cope with, you know, the challenge of coping with complexity to create simplicity to the users.
And this is all about making sure you have the system integration layers and the service-oriented architecture in place, and that is basically where most of the efforts go into these projects.
It's about APIs, right? It's about data accessibility, and we do have a challenge there. And this challenge brought us to decide: do we want to spend 2 years to fix the background, or do we want to start fixing the background and we do something meanwhile? And that's where we ended up to do. So we actually don't have a pure native app. We try from a UX perspective to keep the design consistency across native and web views and web pages. So when you enter the booking engine, when you enter the check-in, actually you enter in, you know, a web page and not a native screen. And meanwhile, we are working on rebuilding infrastructure which will enable data and enables more stability. This one opened up the need of testing, and you've been talking a lot to me about testing. And in the beginning, you know, it's something that from a product, I was the product owner of the SAS Core App. It's something that you always think about as a second step. Yeah, we will do testing, of course, right? It's in the process, in the project management stuff. But testing becomes as important as development in some sense. And sometimes it's really hard to, you know, to call the Scrum Master or the IT project manager to say, okay, or your executive, and tell them, okay, we are not going to release anything because we need to fix problems. So we are going to descope the next release on new features to the users because we have complaints. So the importance of testing, Andreas.
Importance of testing, you know, as what you build grow in relevance, as what you build becomes business critical, you need to increase your investments and your focus on testing and quality assurance. We found in the global study we did last year that only 1/3 who is active in the mobile channel of companies making significant investments there, only 1/3 has a structured approach to mobile testing. Mobile functional testing, compatibility testing, performance testing, security testing, all of that really has to be in place to ensure that what you build works. So testing is really important in your projects. And when you look at the App Store reviews for these particular apps that we're talking about, we have a lot of 5-star reviews, clean, crisp, easy to use, and then we have a few 1-star reviews. And the 1-star reviews are all about this particular challenge in the one part of the booking process. That has been really tricky to run through the tests, and we're really focusing really hard to address these issues. And to us, it's been a really important point to listen to the feedback here on the App Store, on Twitter, wherever the customer wants to voice the opinion, and to inject this into the testing process even, so we get the iterations and the planning for the next cycle to focus on these comments also. So we're about to wrap up. I just want to share with you what's cooking now in the lab together with Scandinavian Airlines and Massimo. As I said, we just released the iPad app SAS Explore with the understanding and insight that inspiration drives transactions. So with stunning photos and some innovative social media integration, from YouTube and Yelp and Flickr. Maybe Flickr will get some new boost from Yahoo and Marissa Mayer. And some other social media streams, making it interesting to explore the destinations you're interested in. What about the soccer game or the opera, and when it's playing, and you can start to plan your travel around that. And the next few steps in the tablet form factor, we are obviously adding mapping. It lends itself very well, the tablet form factor for maps, and the crisp and clean booking flow from the app. We're bringing it in here as well. And then we're looking at some infographic style illustrations based on the customer's own travel, which is inspiring, and it's also adding some innovation to using the information in an opt-in kind of way. All right.
Yes, and we are pretty much done with our journey. But I really care to leave you with a couple of lessons that I personally learned during these 2 years of development, from strategy to implementation to innovation. And the first one is insights and ideas. Bring people together. Read the data, read your insight data. Make them to work, co-create, co-design. The second one is reframe problems. I mean, if I ask Andreas, to build me a car, and Andreas, can build a car, right? Or you can come back to me and asking, why do you need a car? And then I'm telling, yeah, because I need to go from Gothenburg to Stockholm. And then this one open up a frame of opportunity, right? Because then maybe you can fly, you can take the train, you can even take the boat eventually, and you can go even further. Mm-hmm. So, ask by starting why all the time, because the question why open up a frame of new opportunities that create new solutions. And just to give you an example about that, actually, it was the sliders in the Eurobonus sliders with the points and in the payment page. If you would ask our Eurobonus department to say, I wanted to have the possibility to have a booking flow that enables people to purchase a Word ticket. And we didn't want to go there. We didn't want to create a different flow. So we actually said, okay, it became a form of payment, right? Yeah. You pay part of the trip with points. Innovation is about making people's life better. And simplicity is the catalyst of that. And SAS is investing a lot of resources or energy to make the travel experience easier and simple. So every time that you design something, start by removing. We started when we designed this presentation, Andreas, it was like twice the size, right? And we started shrinking down.
And it's still a little big.
And it's still long. Hire engineers and rent a designer, and I don't want to say that you don't need to have a UX team. What I'm saying here is that you need to have insight engineering knowledge in your company to support consultants like Andreas that comes with ideas, but you needed to check about feasibility. And the importance of APIs. I know it seems like hygienic factors, but for enterprises it's not, absolutely not. We have challenges with APIs integration, so think about build APIs. If there are low-hanging fruits that you can take, but you need to start working on big projects that fix the data, because design trends changes, and iOS 7 is an example. Data will never change, it will always be there. And the most important for me is the sixth one, is create an innovation lab. We're actually starting off now. And I will be in charge, so I feel really proud of this. And it's about putting people together, brainstorm, prototyping, create, doing development, and send it to the factory that create. And there are gazillions of innovative company like Lego that had people and users and actually customer interacting and being part of the innovation lab.
For anything that is relevant to you and your business, you need to have a strategy for. So if you haven't asked yourself those basic questions, what drives your business and what you can do in the mobile channel to enable it, that's an important step to take when you start. listen to the customer. It sounds like cliche, but pay attention to the App Store reviews, pay attention to the Twitter feeds and Facebook and all of that, and inject that into the cycles of your project. And then finally, make it core to the business and make business core to it. And design it with beauty in mind. It has to look good. If you downloaded an app and it doesn't look good, you throw it away, right? So beauty is really important. And then make sure you have a structured approach to quality assurance and in this case, mobile testing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and I guess that both of you sort of understand some Swedish, but we'll take this in English anyway. First of all, I'll give you 2 checks for Instagram pictures, and you will have to share this Raspberry Pi computer. Okay. I don't know how to do that, but maybe
I'm a customer, so I'll take it.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Fine. You talked about having this as the core. Please come into the closer to us here. It doesn't smell bad. Or? Yeah, no, you don't. We need to have this as a core product in the sort of to build the brand of SAS. How open would you be to include other sources? I mean, we talked about the travel experiences, to have sort of rental cars going into that, or other airlines. Would that be sort of an option? Or
absolutely. I mean, that's the opportunity that we have. I mean, we've been focusing the last years in selling tickets pretty much, but we have a few percent of what we call it ancillary revenue, which are all revenue generated out of the ticket, and so we are going to focus. Now in the year to come to compensate that part of the business, because there are huge opportunities. Of course, when you travel, you need you need a hotel, you need a car. But we're also thinking about things like we have a cool product. It's called Crew Guides, which we've been distributing now through an app. We could actually sell like Apple, like 7 kronas tips when you fly to New York, and you get tips for all the destination coming from the crew, from our crew members. Sure. So there are lots of opportunity in the ancillary revenue, which we are definitely makes sense also in a mobile environment.
I guess this was a product that was mainly aimed at, or the framework was the iOS, the Apple platform?
iOS and Android.
And Android, okay.
Yeah.
Is that covering most of it, or do you think that you need to have other platforms as well?
We're obviously in the relationship looking into other platforms, and maybe you want to share something about that.
Yeah, I mean, we have actually a particular case. If you look up a statistic about the usage of iOS and Android, they are completely different than what we see in the download, and due to the fact that our target group is business travel. So we have actually 82% of download from iOS and 18 for Android. Of course, we have the Windows guys screaming, especially the one from Finland, and we are going to do something about that, and we have it in the pipeline, definitely.
How difficult is it to keep up to speed with rapid development from the developers, sort of the iOS platform, now changing in again? And you mentioned that. Is that an obstacle for you working on the new with this kind of things, that the framework is constantly changing?
No, that's what makes life wonderful and fantastic. That makes you feel alive and thriving, and learning a lot all the time, throwing away what you thought was your truth and replacing it. It's not black and white, right? It's all colorful. We just learned that before, right? So it's just adding more color, learning more, and it's just a challenge and an opportunity rather than an obstacle, I think.
I think so. Okay, great. Any questions, Johan or Fredrik, from Twitter?
Yes, there were quite a few questions on Twitter, actually. I think we have time for a few. One person asked, did you look at competitive airlines, apps from competitive airlines, when you developed your apps?
Absolutely. And I was going to share with you a secret tip of mine.
Do.
Okay, so when I work with SAS or when I work with other companies, I create a folder in my iPhone, and I put all the competitors' apps in that folder. And then I get automatically updated with everything they do. And that is a good call to Massimo and say, exactly. Did you check out these 3 new updates from Air France and KLM and all of that? And we have a good conversation. So it becomes my consultant friend. So absolutely, no. that I do. That's a good tip for you. But it's really important to stay. If you are a consultant, to stay on top of what's going on in the industry, so you can provide good advice. And I think Massimo, in your role, you are also paying a lot of attention to what's going on in competition.
Great, thanks.
That's a good strategy. And also, a few people asked, well, the numbers are very impressive, but will this mobile strategy actually lead to new customers and increase in sales overall? The bottom line question, I think, is will this save SAS?
Well, the implication there. But okay, so is this leading to more sales?
I would say so. I mean, I remember one of the first review that we had on the website was a guy with 1 star to say, you get 1 star because you are the last airline, coming, with a mobile app. So, it becomes, I would say, hygienic factor to be there, for a big brand like SAS. So of course, if you look up the number, if I'm saying 55 million, I mean, it sounds a lot, right? But compared to the rest, it's a small percent, of all the overall sales. But if you look up just that part, yes, we have a long way to go. But we know that users are using the app for making searches. They're using the app to
during the research and before you make the final transaction, you use it.
Check-in, boarding pass, delivery. There is lots of things that are triggering business and creating a perception of SAS, of an innovation of SAS. So I will say yes, definitely.
Great. Thank you very much for coming, and let's give him a big hand.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Tack Andreas. Tackar.